And if you love my channel and would like to show your support, please click on the link below this video and become the patron of the Ushanka Show. For as little as $1, you can help us grow and create the new, interesting videos about the life in Soviet Union.
Hello, comrades, and welcome back to Ushanka Show. Здравствуйте, товарищи. Добро пожаловать на программу Ushanka Show. Well, today we're gonna talk about dating and relations between young and not young people in Soviet Union. This is the topic that was requested quite a few times. And now, since we're done with vacation in the USSR, we'll talk about how the Soviet people date and how they had relations between man and a woman. And so this is the topic of our video today. But first of all, I would like you to watch this amazing short video. This is 1989. So Gorbachev is already at power. We already have perestroika and glasnost. And glasnost is like the openness. So this was a kind of fun period of life in Soviet Union. Life was still pretty decent, but now we were more open and we were learning more about other countries, including the United States. And this is actually a fragment from the show. We called it Telemost, so like a television bridge. So there was a satellite like live show, like we call it right now, televised bridge, televised TV show between Boston and Leningrad, which now it's called St. Petersburg. And people who I call old-timers, and I guess I'm pretty much getting close to be old-timer, probably would recognize maybe that the show, maybe someone was watching it at that time. It was really popular in Soviet Union, all these TV bridges where audience in Soviet Union was asking questions, audience back like in the United States. And in the United States, there was a famous TV anchor, Phil Donahue. I'm not sure if he's still alive or not, but he was running the show out of Boston. And famous Soviet anchor, Vladimir Pozner, he was in Leningrad. So now watch this episode and we'll talk about it.
Я хотела бы сказать, что у нас в телерекламе все крутится вокруг секса. Есть ли у вас такая телереклама?
Секса у нас нет, и мы категорически против этого.
У нас есть, у нас нет рекламы.
Это ошибка.
So did you like it? I find it amazing. This is before meme was invented. This lady created the very first Soviet meme. There is no sex in Soviet Union. It became just so popular, you know, in conversation. If something start talking about sex or between, you know, something going on between your wife and you or your girlfriend, and somebody will just drop it. Well, there's no sex in Soviet Union. But yeah, this is what this lady did. She created the very first Soviet meme before the meme was the thing. There is no sex in Soviet Union. And it's funny, in the background, other lady corrected her. She's like, no, there is sex in Soviet Union. We just don't have advertising using, you know, sex appeal that sells sex type of thing. But the way that lady blurted out, what I think she was trying to say, that we don't have sex on TV. Other option in Soviet Union, and particularly in Russian language, like we borrowed the English word sex, and the meaning is like something not clean. It's more like dirty. It's like it's a pornography. You know, like when people love each other, they make love. If it's porn, then they have sex. So it was imported word from English language and didn't carry that same meaning like in English language. So that's kind of interesting. But There is no sex in Soviet Union. I probably should design a t-shirt and it might even sell. There is no sex in Soviet Union. The very first Soviet meme, or maybe the very first meme in the world, period. Okay, and on this fun note, now we will discuss how the people were dating and meeting each other back in the Soviet Union. I mean, there's really nothing that unusual circumstances. You know, you're thinking it's like I can tell you about my grandparents, my parents. So of course you subtract all the modern technologies, cell phones, online dating and all that stuff. Like my parents, they met in 1969, because they got married in 1970 and I was born in 1971. And in the cities and in the villages, like in the cities was popular places, so-called tanzplощadki, so it's like dance area, and usually in the summer there'll be somewhere in the park. There will be a band playing music, and girls come with their girlfriends and the guys show up and they hang out, check each other out, and then there's a slow music start playing. If you see some girl you kind of like, you just go invite her for a dance, and you dance, you talk, and if you like each other, then maybe you invite her for to go for a date. And that's how my parents met, on the dance floor in some park in Kiev. My grandparents on the mother's side, Grandpa Sergey and Maria, they met at the wedding. That's another quite popular and way of how people met, is would be at somebody else's wedding. And usually, we didn't have a like best man and whatever the ladies, like best woman or something. We'll have so-called witnesses. So you pick your best friend who is single as a witness, and he'll be signing papers, like he'll be a witness of your marriage, right? Because we didn't go to church at the wedding during the Soviet Union. And then, of course, the bride will have her best friend as a witness, and you pick single people. That's kind of like the unwritten rule that it should be your best friend and they should be single. And besides participating officially to sign the papers that they witnessed this marriage certificate, they also will be sitting next to, of course, just like in America, next to the groom and the bride. And one of the things they will, they constantly make groom and bride kiss during the wedding partying, like we have people drink and eat the celebration. And they also will force, maybe not force, but they'll make best friends kiss each other too. So you'll be forced to kiss. They'll be the way they do. Well, I think they do the same here in the United States. You start hitting with a spoon on your glass, and that loud clinking noise, it goes louder and louder. And in order to stop it, you need to kiss the other person. So, a guy start kissing the girl, and then maybe they like it, and then they start dating, and they get married. That's how my grandparents met each other at the wedding, but that was back in 1920s in the village in the northern Ukraine. And I have a funny story about the wedding, because I was a best man, to say the witness, here in the United States. A friend of mine got married, and there was kind of similar situation to mine. I was here, and I married my wife, and basically all my family, they couldn't come, and it was way too expensive, and it's long, painful process to get visas, so I didn't have any relatives on my side. So kind of same thing happened to my friend Alex. He, just like me, came to work in a summer camp, and then he met a girl, and they got married. So he invited me to be his witness, his best man. Even I was already married at that time, but he just had no one else. So I was like, okay, fine. So they made me to kiss the bride's girl at the wedding, and my wife wasn't happy when she found out about it. So, but that's, this is Russian tradition. I had to do it. I was forced. Also, quite a few friends of mine, they met at the parties, like, when people gather to celebrate somebody's birthday. So, for example, a girl would invite her friends from her college, and then she tells her boyfriend, hey, can you bring a couple friends of yours, and then, you just celebrate the birthday, then you meet the girls and you start talking, and then maybe you start dating. So I know several friends of mine that they met people that way at somebody's birthday party, or sometimes they had just a party, parents going out of apartment, and teenagers will get some alcohol, some music, and invite girls, and they can meet that way. So several friends met their future wives that. One of my cousins met his future wife at the construction site. Kind of interesting. It was quite popular. Well, not popular, but students were forced almost to go and help in construction. Like in this case, in the Ukraine, in the village where I grew up with my grandparents, they were building a cow farm. So they built this building where they keep the cows, and they just sent, 30 students from Chernihiv Teachers College. And so these girls will help in with construction. That was kind of like it's a part of your education. You need to go and help at some Komsomol construction projects. And my cousin, Uncle Misha, that artist that I told you about, who's in my videos before, that's his son. So he was just, spending his summer break in the village with my grandparents and his grandparents. And he met this girl who came from Chernihiv to work on building this cow farm. And in the evening, they had dances at the club there. And that's how they met and started dating and ended up getting married. So that's another way you can meet a girl of your dreams on the construction site. Or actually, that was at the dance, but that's how she came to that village. And of course, we also had a situation like so-called high school sweethearts. I know one couple, they started dating in the 9th grade. In Soviet Union, I already told you, we had only 10 years school. So last year of high school is the 10th grade. It's a little bit kind of a silly way they end up getting married. They were dating, having sex, and someone told this guy that there's a specific position that girls don't get pregnant. So he started stop using condoms because they found this magic position, and girls got knocked up, got pregnant, and he had to marry her. So that's kind of high school sweetheart, but it was a marriage by accident. And also, of course, you can meet someone in college. While you're in college, another friend of mine, Dima, he went to Zaporozhye to study medicine in a local medical college, and that's where he met his future wife. So they're both doctors. So that's other way that people, I said, there's a lot of things, like nothing unusual really, how people met in Soviet Union and started dating. I knew another guy that actually met his future wife while being on vacation at the Black Sea. And now we're coming back to our vacation stories and spending time at the Black Sea. There just was a summer fling. They're just, having fun. And I guess they liked each other so much that after going back to their hometowns, she was from other town in Ukraine, they started corresponding, calling each other, and ended up getting married. So that's how people also, they can have just summer fling, summer romance, and it's end up in marriage. Of course, since not many people had their own cars, people use public transportation all the time, and there would be quite a few chances that you can meet someone on the bus or on a train, different circumstances. A lot of guys who are persistent, if they see a pretty girl, they just hit on her. So in the bus, you kind of stuck with staying next to the guy, especially if it's packed, and he start talking to you, and maybe you start liking him, and then you give him a phone number, or you agree for some date. So I knew guys that met their future wives on the bus. Or for example, if you see a girl maybe carrying a heavy bag, you can offer her help to carry the bag with groceries to her apartment, start talking, and maybe start dating. I had actually an interesting situation, but at that time, I was already had a girlfriend, but I was on the subway like 9 p.m. or something, or 10 p.m. going to my girlfriend's place. And this girl approached me when I get off the subway station. She just approached me and politely asked if it's okay if I can walk her to her apartment. And that was kind of weird. I was like, why do you want me to do that? She's like, my parents have this rule and they're really strict that I need to be escorted by my boyfriend if I come home after 9 p.m. because they worry about me, being raped or whatever. So do you mind just kind of walk with me to my apartment? It's, pretty close from here. And they just kind of hold my hands and we pretend like we're talking. You don't have to kiss me. It's like, oh no, really? Thank God I don't have to kiss her. She was actually pretty. So that's what I did. I walked with her and we chatted, and then we stood, because she said my dad will be watching. So we stood in the front of this apartment building for a minute or two, kind of like had just pretending like we're talking. Then she said, thank you so much. And she left. And then, of course, if I'll be single, or maybe I'll try to say, hey, what about tomorrow? I can do the same thing again. So that's how people also could meet and start dating on a public transportation. And of course, when I started dating, there were pretty limited things you could do while dating, especially, in 70s, like when my grandparents, or 60s when you date. You pretty much go for a walk in the park, or you go movies. That was a popular thing to do. There's not a lot of entertainment. Some people who had, like, I don't know how to say it correctly, like higher interest, they may go to theater, or ballet, watch something like that, or circus. But mostly there will be, you buy girlfriend ice cream, you go for a walk in the park, and then you maybe take her to the movies, or you go again to the dance area in the park, and then you dance. Also, they had these areas when the people had carousels, kind of like a little county fair, but there was a permanent installation, and you just take them there and they go for different rides. So that was pretty much what people did for dating. Maybe you go out of town, a small camping trip for a day, set up fire, cook something, do some fishing, stuff like that. So not much you really could do, because most people didn't have cars. But of course, if you had your own car, it's a totally different game, because you like above anybody else. A lot of girls would be dating you because you have a car. It's so cool. Let's talk about sex, comrades. Okay, so of course, if we're talking about dating, we have to talk about sex. There's interesting, of course, there's different options. Some people had sex before marriage. A lot of people didn't, especially in like 60s and 50s. And it's not even like because of religion. It just, that was the thing that you don't have sex before you get married. You're supposed to be a virgin. Like my parents both were virgins. I found it totally by accident, because when I started dating one lady, and my mom got disturbed because she was quite a bit older than me, and and I was a virgin that time. So then, it was going on for about 3 or 4 months. So my mom became concerned. So she started kind of attacking, like, hey, you gotta quit. You had your fun. I'm still concerned, because if you meet some girl that you want to marry and she'll find out that you already had sex, you might lose her. You're not supposed to have sex before you get married. So I kind of got frustrated, and I turned to my dad and I was like, Dad, you were a virgin? Did you have sex with anybody before you met Mom? And he's like, no. So I was like, what? So a lot of people, they waited for to get married to have sex. Of course, to be kissing, maybe, touching each other, whatever. But there was no sex before marriage. But of course, later in the 80s and 90s, it became quite looser. Standards went down, I would say that. And, I have mixed feelings about this. It's kind of like cool that you don't lose your virginity before marriage. But on the other hand, how do you find out if that person may be just, not compatible with each other, and then you're stuck for the rest of your life because, you couldn't have sex before you get married? And of course there's this saying that, no one will buy a cow if they get free milk. This kind of saying that we have in Russia and Soviet Union. So the mother tells the girl, like, hey, if you let the guy have a piece of ass, I apologize for my improper English, there's no reason for him to marry you, because he's getting free milk. Why he want to buy the whole cow? And it's kind of this thing. And I was dating once a girl, and it was a pretty short dating, but she was pretty open right away in the beginning that there'll be no sex till we get married. But I wasn't planning to marry her. So I was like, "Oh, we don't want to waste each other's time." You know, like I like her, like she was fun to date, but she wasn't definitely not the type of the wife that I was looking for. Like for me, it's important if the girl knows how to cook and she likes to cook. And that chick, I don't think she even knew where the kitchen located in her apartment. Like mom was taking care of everything. She never cooked. So I was like, I don't know if I really want to get in that type of relation. So I was like, okay, I really respect her for her being that strict and, you know, no sex before marriage, but I really don't want to spend time, you know, dating sex free if I'm not going to marry that girl. So quite a few people didn't have sex, before marriage back in the Soviet Union. As to age, I would say, you know, girls, they kind of started usually earlier than guys dating. So probably they start dating 15, 14, 16. Some will probably start having intercourse around 16, 17. There'll be quite often situation, of course, that, you know, they dating, they in love, but then of course a guy gets drafted, since we had a draft in Soviet Union, and it's a 2-year if you get into army, or 3 years if you get Soviet Navy, and that's of course would be a lot of drama. You know, you say goodbye to your girlfriend and then you're gone for 2 years. And quite often, you know, girl can't wait that long, so she'll start dating somebody else, falls in love, and then you come back and your ex-girlfriend already married to someone else. Sometimes they would wait, so there's another kind of love drama in Soviet Union, is waiting for your boyfriend to come back from service. And there's kind of, I remember there was some kind of, I think it was in a magazine, it was already like late 80s when there was more openness and they started talking about sex. So this girl wrote the letter asking a question. She's like, I'm waiting for my boyfriend to return from army service. And, you know, I'm strict, so we didn't have sex with my boyfriend because I want to be a virgin when I get married. And, you know, it's really hard to wait for a whole 2 years. So I'm dating other guys. And, of course, guys want to have some fun. So I give them blowjobs, but I don't let them have sex because I'm keeping myself as a virgin for my guy when he comes back and we get married. And the doctor was, the psychologist or someone that was like, oh my God, I don't know what to say. This is just ridiculous. The fact that you think you're so keeping your innocence by performing oral sex on other guys while you're waiting for your main boyfriend, so you get married and then you give him your innocence. So that was a quite interesting situation. So anyway, so this is what a short story, kind of short snippet about dating and relations between young men and women in the Soviet Union. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any more questions, please post on this video. And as always, don't forget to put like. And thank you so much for everyone who supports me through patreon.com. Well, I hope you enjoy my video about dating in the Soviet Union. But I forgot to mention one small detail, and actually I'm kind of surprised that no one asked the question, what about dating and meeting girls in the bars? So today we're going to talk about Soviet drinking halls and why Soviet guys didn't have a chance to pick up a chick in the bar. Well, the reality is that there was no such thing like a bar or pub in the Soviet Union. I mean, there were some, we're going to talk about it, but it's a special kind. We didn't have anything like Irish theme bar or whatever. Such things like bartender and having a row of different bottles behind his back, and he's mixing different drinks for people, serving beer, people hanging out, listening to music, play pool. That was completely not existent in Soviet Union. But there were some places when people could drink, and those were usually related to beer. First of all, you need to know that beer wasn't that popular in Soviet Union. According to information that I discovered, once again, this is the topic that I'm not a real professional or proficient person to talk about it, because I don't drink much, I never drank much, and I don't drink beer at all. Like, I hate the taste, and I don't touch beer, period. So beer in Soviet Union, what I found statistics, average, we always talk average because you calculate the whole population, including babies and women and children. So the average person in Soviet Union was drinking somewhere around 15 liters of beer per year. So divided roughly by 4, you're talking, maybe about 4 gallons, a little bit less average. In the same time, vodka consumption was 7 to 8 liters. So pretty much you got 4 gallons of beer per person and 2 gallons of hard liquor vodka. So people preferred drinking hard liquor. And I kind of see this logic. For me, if you're drinking to get drunk, beer is just waste of time. You can get to your destination way faster and have fun after only a couple of good shots of vodka versus, drinking the whole pitcher of beer. It'll take way longer. And yeah, my American friends tell me, well, it's not about destination, it's about trip. You're hanging out with your friends and drink. I'm like, well, whatever. I prefer to get drunk and then hang out with friends. It's more fun that way. So as I said, there were no actual bars like in the West in Soviet Union, but we had so-called pivnaya. And I guess you can translate it as a beer hall or beer house. So there'll be a place you walk in and you can purchase beer, usually out of keg. It's a fresh beer, and there'll be some tables. Most of the time people had to bring their own snacks. And the most famous snack for the beer, most popular snack was taranka, which is like salted dry fish. And people will be just having this big glass mugs with the handle and stand-up tables, no chairs, and people will be just standing there drinking beer, maybe snacking on taranka and having a conversation. So those were really not places to hang out most of the time. And if you see these pictures, they were just guys. If you meet a lady in that place, she would probably be looking really rough. She would probably like complete alcoholic. There is expression in America I learned that I like a lot. She's been ridden hard and put away wet, which kind of relates to that when you ride the horse real hard and make it all foamy and wet, you're supposed to wipe it off with a towel to dry it up before putting away wet. So when they talk about rough-looking women who have been partying with the wrong guys, they said, she's been ridden hard and put away wet. Well, in this case, those Soviet women, if you meet them in those beer halls, pivnaya, they've been ridden hard and no one bothered even to put them away. Not even wet. So you definitely don't want to start dating anyone you meet in those beer halls in Soviet Union. The other option would be even more basic. It was so-called beer kiosk. So there'll be a standalone little shack, little kiosk, and inside there will be some barrels with fresh beer, and people will bring their own jars, for example, the 3-liter glass jars or other carry type of stuff you can put your beer in, or you can just purchase some and drink right there. Once again, there'll be this big glass mug with the handle. Now, a lot of people preferred that purchase beer that way versus buying them bottled, because one of the good things about Soviet Union, since we had shortage, deficit, if you remember the word, of pretty much anything, stuff never remained on the shelves for way too long. So there was no need to add any preservatives in anything, food-wise, beer-wise, because people were buying it off right away. So even if the beer, without adding anything to it, will last up to 7 days, it won't be on a shelf for 7 days. It'll be purchased right away and consumed. So fresh beer was better, because sometimes by the time maybe beer in a bottle will make it from the factory to the store, it will already get spoiled and doesn't taste right. If the fresh beer in the barrel came right to beer kiosk, they'll be having the best flavor. If you guys have interest, I can make a separate video about specifically beer in Soviet Union. As I said, I need to work on it because I wasn't consuming much beer. But the most popular beer, which was popular because it was mostly mass-produced everywhere, was called Zhigulyovskaya piva. The Russian word for beer is piva. And I remember my dad, he'll bring a bottle and drink it. So that was the most available kind of beer. And I guess it was okay. It, made people drunk. So that's what people usually consume. It's, if you think beer and Soviet Union, there'll be right away everyone thinking about word Zhigulyovskaya beer. And of course, we had no advertising for that beer because there's no point to advertise. It was pretty much the only option you can purchase. And an interesting story that I experienced, they opened the beer kiosk like that sometimes in the middle of 80s by our building where I lived in Ukraine. That's the new apartment that had 3 rooms, and suddenly they set up this metal kiosk for selling beer, and pretty much all evening there'll be a bunch of guys there hanging out, buying beer, drinking. They just stay outside, smoke cigarettes, drink beer. There'll be a couple guys laying around because they're so drunk they can't move. So that was kind of annoying because it was pretty close to the place where the kids play, little children, set up with the swings and stuff. But then we started having a horrible problem because, in order to get drunk consuming beer, you have to drink a lot of beer, which means you need to use the bathroom all the time. And of course, they set up kiosk, but they never bothered to set up any porta potties. I don't remember. We never had those, period, in Soviet Union. So of course, all these drunks will be drinking beer, then wandering around, finding a spot behind the bushes by the buildings, and just taking a piss, then going back and drinking more. So very soon, all the area became extremely stinky. It was just, you walk outside and you walk towards the bus stop to catch the bus, and you walk past that kiosk, and you just smell that stench of urine, of the piss. And so all the local guys got upset about it. And one time in the middle of the night, that kiosk caught fire. They fixed it, put the new kiosk, and 2 or 3 weeks later, once again, someone was not careful with matches in the middle of the night. That kiosk caught fire again. So I guess after the second fire, they got a hint that local people don't want this place to be here, because we complained officially, I guess, to local authorities about it, but they didn't do anything. So then citizens just took the thing in their own hands and took care a little bit different way. So after 2 fires, they removed that kiosk, and we didn't have that problem with bad smell around our area. So this is my short story about drinking halls in Soviet Union and why Soviet guys never met girls in the bars. But we had interesting kind of bars, so-called hard currency bars, and they were located in fancy hotels that usually foreigners stayed in. And those are really interesting bars, and I'm going to talk about in my next video. So for right now, I'm going to wrap up. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, don't forget to put likes, and I always appreciate people who support me on patreon.com. Thank you very much. Ushanka Show presents The Final Years of the Soviet Union. Последние годы Советского Союза. Greetings, comrades. My name is Sergey, and I was born in USSR. Здравствуйте, товарищи. Меня зовут Сергей, и я родился в Советском Союзе. So in today's video, we're going to continue to look at the last years of the Soviet Union. Remember, we talked about Gorbachev, 3 horses of Soviet doom, so-called Troika. And those horses were Ускорение, Перестройка, и Гласность. So let's take a look at our favorite horsey, Glasnost, which made life in the Soviet Union in its final years so much fun. And if you're not familiar with this term, Glasnost, it meant openness and less communist censorship. And because of this Glasnost policy, the Soviet mass media changed drastically and irreversibly. And today we're going to talk about one article that exploded like a bomb and shocked and shook the whole country. Okay, let me introduce you to a newspaper called Moskovsky Komsomolets, Komsomol member of Moscow. So it was a local newspaper of the Central Committee of the Komsomol of Moscow and Moscow region. So, for example, I never heard of that newspaper until the events of the fall of 1986. It just happened that the editors of this particular newspapers decided to push the envelope and to see how far the walls moved with the new glasnost policy, and it made them famous, made the newspaper famous. Let me introduce you to Evgeny Dodolev, who worked as a reporter for Moskovsky Komsomolets, and in the fall of 1986 he wrote one quite interesting article. The title of the article was Nochnye Охотницы, Night Hunters, but in Russian language Охотница means female hunter, so it's a female, not male. Otherwise it will be Ночной Охотник. So this article appeared in October of 1986. Evgeny Dodolev submitted that article, Night Hunters, in the beginning of the summer of 1986, but it took the whole summer and some and heavy editing before that article appeared in Moskovsky Komsomolets. And I want to remind my viewers that in spring of 1986, it's when the Chernobyl power plant had that horrible accident, so there was a lot of things going on that summer. Hey, guess what? I just looked it up, and apparently you do have a word for female hunter. It's called huntress. So we're talking about night huntresses. So the main issue with that article, the night huntresses, was that there were hints that there is possibility that Soviet Union still had a problem with prostitution. But it, of course, wasn't mentioned like that. They talked about ladies with low social responsibilities, which is девушки с низкой социальной ответственностью. Quite a word. About a month later, after Night Huntress's article was published, some KGB guys showed up at the Moskovsky Komsomolets newspapers, and they wanted to talk to the reporter, to Evgeny Dodolev. And that KGB officer had an instant offer. He was wondering if the reporter would like to continue this topic and learn more about trading sex for money in the capital of the Soviet Union. I can only guess why KGB wanted to leak information and help this reporter, but apparently the old-timers in the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union had no clue that there was a prostitution going on in the Soviet Union, while KGB was well aware that it's happening. Fun fact, since officially there was no prostitution in Soviet Union, so there was no criminal law against prostitution, so you couldn't get in trouble for selling love for money. So maybe that was one of the reasons why KGB wanted to expose the situation, to force the government to come up with some law, which we'll see actually it did happen. But there was another side of this problem, is that the girls worked with foreigners. So they were actually trading hard currency for their hard bodies, and KGB didn't like this illegal cash flow on foreign currency that they didn't control. And at that time, Soviet militia, Soviet police could arrest the girls like that only for illegally dealing with foreign currency, not for prostitution. So they catch you with American dollars, taking them or selling them for rubles. That's the only way you can arrest them and put them in jail. Quite a dilemma, right? But let's go back to our reporter, Evgeny Dodolev. The KGB guys was very nice and helpful. They actually arranged several interviews between the reporter and the girls, and they called them valютные проститутки, so it translates like hard currency prostitutes. They let him listen to the recorded phone calls between the clients and the girls, and they let him to read the reports of the interrogations. The stuff was so explosive that Dodolev didn't trust his typewriter girl, so he typed all the articles by himself. The output of this investigation was a two-part article called Белый танец, the White Dance. And I'm not sure about English language, but in Russian, Белый танец, the White Dance, is the dance when ladies invite guys for a dance. And when Dodolev received his manuscript back with some corrections from the newspaper editor, Pavel Gusiev, the editor said, it's going to be published tomorrow, and tomorrow you're gonna wake up famous. Part 1 of The White Dance was published on November 19, 1986, and it was a bomb, in a good sense of that word. To their utter shock and dismay, Soviet citizens discovered that we have prostitution in the Soviet Union. And in fact, we have a hard currency prostitution when the ladies are chasing foreigners around the hotels and that the girls making really good money. Okay, so let's have a quick lesson of the Russian language. Валютная проститутка. Валютная проститутка. So that's a foreign currency prostitute. Valuta was our word for foreign currency, usually United States dollars, British pounds, or German Deutschmark. Валютная проститутка. So back in the early 80s, during the Brezhnev era, валютные проститутки in Moscow were getting between $50 to $100 per night, or they call it per hit, per one udar. So it could be just a quick meet in a hotel room, or it could be all night. So between $50 to $100. Even though official rate of exchange was 60 kopecks for every dollar, on the black market you could sell $1 for 4 Soviet rubles. So the girl could get in one night 400 rubles. And I mentioned quite often in my videos that average salary in the early 80s was around 150 to 200 rubles per month. Like highly paid academia people, like scientists, were getting 500 rubles a month. A girl for one night stand in a hotel would get 400 rubles in a single night versus 500 rubles for scientists for a month. And it's even what's more funny that the guy who wrote this article, The White Dance, Белый танец, Evgeny Dodolev, his salary at that time was 65 rubles a month. So he wrote an article about the girls making 400 rubles a night while earning 65 rubles per month. So once again, if we return to the whole topic of who was making money in the Soviet Union, remember Soviet taxi drivers. I did make videos about waitresses, but it's another category of people who are well-paid jobs. And another category now we can talk, валютные проститутки, hard currency prostitutes were one of the highest paid professions in the Soviet Union. But let's go back to our article, The White Dance. So the part 1 was published on November 19. Next day, Moskovsky Komsomolets wasn't published at all, so that newspaper didn't come out. So there were tons of phone calls. People up above were trying to figure out what to do with this sensation, this breaking news. So they told publishers of Moskovsky Komsomolets, don't do anything. So they didn't publish any newspaper that day on November 20th. So I can only imagine what went through the mind of the readers of this newspaper, people who subscribed to it. They got this super interesting article, part 1, next day, no newspaper. You could think, oh my God, everyone got arrested and shipped to Siberia. And I'm not sure how far in Soviet government the phone calls went up. I won't be surprised all the way to the comrade Gorbachev. And he probably said, yes, I'm Mikhail Gorbachev and I approve this message. This is what I call glasnost. So then on November 21st, the Moskovsky Komsomolets was published again, and they had part 2 of the White Dance article. So that's how Soviet people discovered that developed socialism and prostitution can peacefully coexist. And the rest is history. And here's the fun fact for the comrades that try to learn Russian language. So we have this term describing kind of polite way prostitutes. The term is ночная бабочка, which can be translated as a nightly butterfly or night butterfly. And this term was introduced in this article that we're talking about today, The White Dance. He called prostitute the night butterflies, ночные бабочки, and that term kind of got introduced to the Russian language and everyone began using it. Another fun fact, because of this article, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union had to admit, yes, we have a problem with prostitution. So they introduced the new article in the law that punished prostitution with fine of 100 rubles. So you can make 400 rubles a night, but if you get caught, you'll pay a fine of 100 rubles. So still looks like a pretty decent deal. And of course, if we talk about Nochneye Babочки, about night butterflies, hard currency prostitutes, we need to mention the movie from 1989, Interdevочка, International Girl. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it on YouTube, but that movie was based on a book, and it's pretty much the story of the hard currency prostitute that end up marrying a guy from Sweden and moving to Sweden. So that's another good story about Soviet naughty girls, Interdevочка, Intergirl. And of course, some of my friends on the left could be skeptical because, like, come on, in a country of developed socialism with free housing, free healthcare, free education, why would anyone want to take up on prostitution and take that profession? Personally, I don't have an answer, but I remember I read an article. It was a different article. The girl explained how she became a prostitute. She apparently just wanted to marry a foreigner and leave the Soviet Union. So one time she hooked up with some Italian guy in a restaurant, and then she went with him to his room, spent the night, and then in the morning when they were going down for breakfast, he put in her hand $50, and she kind of like got upset because she's like, I'm not a whore, why are you giving the money? And he looked at her like, well, this is why you went with me to my place last night, right? And she's just like, well, and then she looked at the money and realized that's a lot of money, and that went downhill from there. There's another fun fact. So the article was published in 1986. 3 years later, in 1989, there was anonymous kind of like questionnaire for the high schoolers in Riga and Leningrad, and about what do they think the 10 most prestigious profession, and hard currency prostitution was on the top 10 of most prestigious professions in the Soviet Union. So a lot of people were really mad at this journalist because he told the truth. He told about price list, and it made that profession almost like elite profession for the young Soviet teenagers. So yeah, this is how glasnost, the openness introduced by Mikhail Gorbachev, brought so much fun in the final years of the Soviet Union. Здравствуйте, дорогие товарищи. So today we're going to talk about perestroika and sex in the Soviet Union. But before we begin, I would like to ask you, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't done it yet. If you follow Ushanka Show, you may remember that I mentioned quite a few times that the final years of the Soviet Union, so late 80s, were the most exciting years in my life and probably in the life of the most Soviet citizens. After Comrade Mikhail Gorbachev introduced perestroika and glasnost in the USSR, people in the Soviet Union had an opportunity to start watching Western movies. I already talked on this topic in my video how Hollywood helped to finish off the Soviet Union, and if you somehow missed that video, I'll post the link in the comment section below this video. Okay, so here you're looking at the short article which was published in one of the Soviet newspapers back in 1991. The title of this article: «Оказывается, волокжане очень впечатлительный народ. As it turned out, the people of Vologda town are very susceptible people». I hope I said this word correctly. Susceptible. Впечатлительный. And Vologda is the city in the northern western Ukraine with population about 300,000 people. And the article says, in March of 1991, so it's still Soviet Union, the inhabitants of Vologda for the very first time watched the erotic movie on their TV. It was shown by the commercial TV channel. So that's about that time, 1990, 1991, when we had back in the Soviet Union, the very first commercial private TV channels, and they were over the air, not the cable TV. So here in March of 1981, one of those private channels showed some erotic movie. Erotica, we say, эротический film. I can only guess what movie they showed in Vologda, but as far as I remember, the list of erotica movies was pretty short back then. So quite possibly it was Греческая смоковница, or English title The Fruit is Ripe, 1976 German erotica movie. So as you see, the Soviet Union was quite behind the curve. In 1991, for the very first time, people were watching 1976 movie. Or possibly it was Emmanuel, 1974 French erotic show that was also very popular in the USSR. Another possibility is a Hollywood flick from 1986 with Kim Basinger, 9.5 Weeks. I saw that movie. Emmanuel and The Fruit is Ripe. I didn't watch those yet. I might have to catch up, but I did see 9.5 Weeks and I liked it a lot. And yet another possibility, another movie with Mickey Rourke from 1989, The Wild Orchid. I have a couple of good stories about that movie, but let's finish the article first. Okay, so in March of 1991, the inhabitants of Vologda city saw the erotic movie for the very first time. And can you imagine that? Exactly 9 months later, in the city, there was a explosion of births. In a weekly time, before and after the December 16th, the amount of birth increased 40%. So 9 months after March of 1991, when the people of Vologda saw for the very first time erotica, there was 40% increase in childbirth in that city. Isn't it something? And I just remember something. During the Gorbachev time, in the end of the 80s, there was a totally unexpected baby boom in the Soviet Union. Prior to that, the birth rate was going down and down, but there was like a small baby boom explosion. And people were saying that's because Gorbachev started anti-alcohol campaign. So men were bored because they couldn't buy vodka. So they got busy in the bedrooms with their wives, and that's why they had a baby boom. But maybe, just maybe, that baby boom was because of the movies like The Fruit is Ripe and Wild Orchid and 9.5 Weeks started making their way into the Soviet Union, into the Soviet minds, and make poor Soviet people horny. It's impossible to build the world communism when you are horny. Okay, so let's talk about The Wild Orchid, Дикая орхидея, 1989 erotic Hollywood flick with Mickey Rourke. I have quite a hilarious family story about this movie. So my mother's co-worker, another lady, she went to see that movie in the movie theater and she loved it so much. My guess, they came home after the movie, had a lot of fun in the bedroom. So she told my mom that she must take her husband and go watch that movie. So my mom was so excited. They bought a ticket. They went to the movies. So came back and my mom was so pissed because she was just too, I guess the word would be prudent. And she did not enjoy all that erotic stuff that her co-worker liked so much. So it didn't work for us. But Wild Orchid was a total disaster for my family. And many years later, when I already lived and worked in the United States, I had my own Wild Orchid story. That was kind of hilarious. So back in the early 2000s, I did a lot of local moving, working for my father-in-law. And we picked up this one account. So there was a phone call and the lady was on the phone and she said she was a realtor from nearby town and she had some moving to be done. She wanted to hire us. So when we, made an appointment, she said, well, take this highway, Red Arrow Highway, and before New Buffalo, there'll be a store called the Wild Orchid. So my ears kind of perked up like, oh, is that an adult store? And she's like, oh my God, why some people thinking this is the adult store? It's my, home furnishing store. So I couldn't help but laugh. And like, ma'am, you might want to consider renaming your store, and you might want to rent a video called The Wild Orchid and watch that steamy Hollywood show to realize why some people think it's adult store. And I was like, I don't know how you don't know about The Wild Orchid. And I actually did a lot of moving jobs for that real estate lady. She turned out to be quite an attractive one. And I actually had the most romantic moving job in my life with her. And what happened that we came to finish the moving job that other guys couldn't finish for her. So that was her own house, but they already disconnected power. So we started moving like 8 p.m. and soon it became dark. And since there was no power, she set up candles all over the floor. So you see this attractive woman setting up candles on the floor all over the house. It was just really cool and almost like Wild Orchid erotic. And she had her Land Rover shining lights in the front door. So that was all kind of this dark summer night. There's smells in the air, candles, and this beautiful woman. And we were humping dressers and beds and shit. Anyway, I kind of drifted away from the main topic, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Kind of hilarious article. And I see that happening all over the country when people for the very first time watched some skin on a screen and husbands got horny, wives got horny, and we had that little Gorbachev baby boom. Okay, well, I hope you liked this video. Once again, I want to ask you, please don't forget to like this video, please subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye.